All right, guys, let's get started. So we are recording, really? All right, so today we are currently on week 4, right, of a Linux class sysadmin. So this week we're going to look at a topic called cron and task scheduling. So I think it's a very nice topic, actually. Um, and it deals with automation. It takes that idea of automation further, right? So we've done a few scripting examples. We've looked at Linux commands, and you get this sense of automating tasks. And now we're going to look at a built-in facility called cron, which allows us basically to add more automation, more scheduling of activities. We're just going to learn how. Okay. So it should be pretty interesting. And the nice thing about it is, you can schedule to run commands or you can schedule to run scripts. So you can build a script and then have it run every Tuesday at 3 a.m. and do a task. Okay, so that's essentially what cron is about, and that's what we're going to cover today. All right, so we are recording. I'll start the virtual machine. And I'll be writing some of the commands on the GitHub, so you can have them there, and then also uh, running them on the machine as well, getting a feel for everything. So we're currently on week 4. Remember, exam 1 will be on week 6. So make sure you're practicing the commands, scripting, etc., and just the basic concepts. This is going on. I'll open up GitHub, and I'm still logged in. Okay. All right, so remember that the repo for this associated with this course is Unix and Python scripting. So all the scripts are here. And I think, yeah, so I did the brief history. I'll kind of just keep going here. So I'll add it here at the bottom, just basically cron, and we'll go over some of the information, okay? This is also on Brightspace, so I'm pretty sure you can find it there. All right, let's scroll all the way down. So I will add a new entry, cron. This is called Crontab also. And we'll just get started. So let me make sure the machine started. So let's log in. Terminal. So cron is huge for lots of things, as you'll see probably. But essentially, you have a server, a Linux server, and it's just performing tasks for you. It can look at log files. It can take files and just compress them and move them to another folder. So creating backups essentially, right? So you can do all kinds of things. All right, so let's go ahead and get to the desktop. We're going to go into ITS 372, spring 2025. Sure. All right. So I'm just going to call this cron samples just in case we do anything here. CD into it. And that way we just have it ready for us to use, basically. The screen darker. I don't even know how I did it. Okay. So let's go ahead now and get into the notes here. So cron, center it. So we're going to start defining what it is. But as I said, the key word here is task scheduling. Right? And that's essentially what this is automation, right? So you can automate pretty much any task. It's really powerful. It's what I would have called like, intelligence before the kind of intelligence that we have now with machines, right? So, but it would have just back, even back in that 80s, 90s, it would have been just an entry, you schedule it and then you run a bash script, or something like that, and you do something. So it's going to be called cron tab. It's the command. And basically, we're going to do some things. So like running a script. So our objective will be, for instance, we're going to define a script to log something into syslog of the operating system. All right. Let's go ahead and take a look. So this is basically periodic program execution. Periodic program execution. So the definition of cron is a Unix facility that allows you to schedule programs for periodic execution. Okay, so that's essentially what this is about. You can use cron so let's look at use cases. The use cases are going to be things like backup files at night, for instance. So backup files at night, right? So that's an example. Call scripts, run scripts, right? So that's another one. And any kind of script. And the only limitation is really permissions, right? So the central topic that we saw in the beginning was access control. So you guys know everything is a file in Linux. There's access control. And so that's really the only limitation. But, this is very powerful. All right, so let's we're going to look at basically cron has like a command that we use, and that command will open a file, a text file. And in that text file, we essentially kind of like program the things that we want to run and be executed in a schedule. And it has its own syntax, which is very simple, really. And that's one of the main things that we will do today is just look at the syntax and see how it works. So that's kind of the objective. So the word Crontab, so Crontab stands for cron table. Okay, although it's not an actual table, all right? By default, any user may add entries to the cron schedule, so every user will have, its own cron space, if you will. Cron files are stored, so the cron files are stored in the var directory. In var, so in the var folder of the file system, essentially somewhere in there, there's going to be a cron subfolder or a spool subfolder. So we can provide a further definition of cron. That's a good one. So cron tab entries, direct cron to run commands at regular intervals. Okay, at regular intervals. So that's essentially the idea. All right, and there's not much to define really. So, and we're going to start now learning the essential syntax to add these entries into the cron tab. So one thing we want to know about this is that each basically these are like one-line statements. So we're going to add these one-line statements into the cron file, and every line is something that could be executed at some point in time. Now, all right, so now that we've talked about that, let me add like a little subheading here. I'm just going to call it cron syntax. Okay, so cron syntax. And so we're going to get into how to write these statements. So your homework assignment for this week will be essentially a whole, like 5 problems I've written, and you need to create the cron entry. Does that make sense? So that's pretty straightforward. Okay, so cron syntax. So let's just say the cron file uses one-line entries. So uses one-line entries to run tasks. Okay, so that's essentially what it is. Each one of these entries will have the following format. And each one of these entries has the following format. All right, and so here's the format. So it's gonna be something like this. Let me just write it like that. Format. Minutes, space. So imagine this is this is like the text file. So at the beginning of that line, you're gonna have to enter values for these individual columns. So the first one is minutes, the next one is hours, the next one is day of month, the next one is month, then you have weekday, and finally you have the command, which the command is essentially anything that you would write on the terminal. Okay, so I'll just say here where the command is anything you could write on the terminal. All right, so let me save this. All right, so there you have it. So we've got the definition of cron, and you've got the cron syntax, basically. And this is pretty important, the format. All right. So let me move this thing. All right, so let's keep going. So we'll do some examples now. And let's start cron in the VM. Okay. It should be Crontab -E. All right, and here we have it. So this is Crontab, and it's got instructions basically. So don't delete or erase any of this that's commented out. Here are examples. I think these are examples I've done in the past that I've run. So for instance, I'm going to Scroll down here. So if I do this, that's effectively, oh yeah. Oh yeah, so if just select nano, it's just saying to select one of them. Does it say anything else? Did you get this? Yeah, you should get this without these two entries, basically, which I had from previous classes. So it should look like this without these three, probably. Yeah. Right. So, yeah, these are examples I've done in the past, but it shows you what the syntax of this should be. So don't delete anything here. It just provides information on usage. And here it reminds you of what I just said. So the first column is, minutes, then hours, day of month, and so on. Okay. So now going back to the example, I'm going to remove the comments. And you can see here I'm defining then. So these 5 columns specify when you want to run the command. Do you see that? And then after that, you give it the command. So starting at this U, it's basically the command. It's anything that you would write on the terminal, essentially. So for instance, this example here does uptime. So it's the uptime of the system. And then it redirects it to this text file located on the desktop. Do you see that? And it's going to run it at this specific time. And this is designed to run periodically. So you could say every Monday at 2 p.m. And that's it. I mean, that's like the whole concept of cron. And so in the rest of the class today, we're just going to look at examples of how to create these entries. And I'm writing them on the GitHub page. Any questions about any of this? So this is really powerful. I don't know if you realize, but it's really nice, right? So you could have you have a website running, and then you have a cron like this cron entry, and then it's a script, and that script runs at 2 a.m. every day, or every hour or whatever. You can collect data, you can run a crawler, download data, move it to a folder, process it. You can check if all your servers are up, down. So it's a full automation of your system as long as you have access to whatever it is that you're connected to. So very powerful. All right, so you've seen this, right? So we're going to go back to the notes, and this is how when you do your homework assignment, you'll come here and you'll add your entries, and of course you need to test them. So sometimes I'll say things like, in February 3rd, well, today is February, but let's say in June 11th, do this. Obviously, you can't test that on June 11th, right? Because you'd have to wait until June 11th. So you'll have to change your homework assignment so that you can see the effect. But give me the specific command that I'm asking for. Got it? So provide evidence that it ran, and then just provide the entry that I asked for. All right, so let's go back to the notes and stop me if I'm going too fast. All right, so we've discussed then, you've seen now. To start, let me add here. So cron, I'll add, I don't think I had added how to start cron. So I'll just say to start cron, do. And so I'll put in, remember I'm using the $sign. This indicates the prompt, right? And then you would just, what I just did. So you do cron tab -E, okay? And then select, as you asked, select editor such as nano, is fine. And, whoops. And that's it, right? So that should be what you should be doing. Okay? All right, so we've got the instructions there. So let's keep going. So you have, of course, white space. So we're going to focus on this part here, the format. Okay. So we have white space separating the columns, but you can, in this, the last statement, the command can have multiple white space within it because it's however you write it on the terminal, essentially. So white space separates the fields. However, the final field command can contain spaces within it. So the first 5 fields, specify the times at which cron should run or should execute the command. All right, so now let's look at a description of the fields because this again it's related to the syntax. So let's just say here description, and you'll need to use this for your homework. You have to get this correct. So description of the fields. So the first one, minutes. Right, so minutes is going to be, it's minutes after the hour. It's minutes after the hour. And you're going to have a specific range. So I'm trying to think how to write this efficiently. I'll just do it like this for now. So the range will be from 0 to 59. Okay, so that's the range. The only values you can use for minutes. Okay. Then you have hours and hours of the day. Hours of the day. And the range for this is from 0 to 23. Okay? So those like military time, essentially. And it's 0 is basically midnight. 0 is midnight. Okay, so that's the second column. The third column is day of month. Okay, so we want to specify that one as well. Day of month. So that's going to be a numeric day within a month. Within a month. So 1 to 31. Okay, 1 to 31. Obviously, this has to match the calendar in the operating system. Any questions? Pretty easy, right? So next part, we're going to take a look at the month. So month of the year. Month of the year. And that's going to be from 1 to 12. And then weekday will be day of the week. And that's, again, 0 to 6. Actually, I'll do this range. 0 to 6, where Sunday is 0. So notice that some days start at 1, others start at 0, so it's not consistent though. Okay, and that should be it. So this is the information you need to create the entries. Okay. Just check. So there you have it. You have the information that you need. Okay. All right. So let's just do an example first, and then we're going to go back to a few additional ideas. Let's do an example. Cron syntax. Example. All right, so let's think about it. So first one, 0, 15, 30, 45, then white space, asterisk, white space, asterisk, 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 and then echo date. You see that? So that's the entry. That would be the entry in Crontab. Okay. So what do you think this one does? Hmm?
It just continued it.
Yeah, it's gonna follow this pattern. Yeah. So these first five are when this is gonna run. The asterisk has a meaning, right? It's a wild card, right? So basically, since you don't, so we'll define it. Asterisk is a wild card that represents all valid values for that field. That's going to run basically every. If you say weekday and you put an asterisk there, then every day. Well, yeah. Do you have a question? Oh yeah, go ahead, please. Yeah, exactly. So this is like a list of when it's going to echo out the date, basically. Do you see that? So displays date every 15 minutes, essentially. And this is one way of doing it. Any questions? Yeah, good. Yeah. All right. So that's kind of what we're gonna learn how to do. Okay. And then for the homework assignment or the exam, I would give you like the word problem, and I would just ask you for the cron entry. So this is what we'll be working on this week. Okay. So let me add here. So I did the solution. So this one, I'll use this symbol like that. So it means the previous one uh, displays date every 15 minutes, just like that. Okay. So maybe I can call them like example one, example two. We'll do a lot of examples. It's kind of like all my notes are. All right. So I did throw this thing wildcard at you, and there's a few little tricks like that. So I'll start specifying some of them. So let's just say here, um, let's just say an entry, which is this, an entry. So this is important actually. So an entry in any of these fields, you know, and what I mean by that is, for example, minutes, hours, etc., right? Can be a single number, can be a single number, can be a single number, a pair of numbers separated by dash, pair of numbers separated by dash, which indicates what? A range, probably, right? Indicates a range. Okay. Let me move this thing out of the way. Okay, range. A comma separated list of numbers. Or an asterisk. So in our previous example, that's what we had. So we had a comma separated list of numbers. So that can be an entry. And we could also have an asterisk, which is what we have seen as well. Okay. So let's define what, provide a definition. An asterisk, which is that symbol, of course. Whoops. So an asterisk is a wild card. It's a wild card that represents all valid values for that field. Make sense? So that's kind of it. We're also going to have some special cases that we will see a little later. But yeah. So in the cron tab, as you have seen already, in the cron tab, you can use the pound sign. Use the pound sign to comment out a line. Okay, so you can, just like in Python. All right, so we did an example. So let's try one, right? Let's go ahead and try one. I'll save this. Let's go to, and you can start up your, oops. See if it changed. Yeah, right, it's all there. All right, so let's go to the virtual machine and try out something. So obviously we want this to, let's go to cron tab. I'm going to create a file actually. So let me, in this folder, ls-l, I don't have any files. I'm going to create a file. I'm going to call it cron, I'm going to call it my cron log. Whoops. Do you guys see that? And then .txt. Okay, and I'm just, I'm going to add maybe like a log for cron. So I created that little example. Okay, save it, Control X, Y, enter. I want to get the path for that one. So in the log, yeah, I added some text in there. Can you see it? A log for cron. All right. Yeah. So I want to write basically to this file using cron, so I'm going to schedule it, and that's the example. So I'm going to need to remember the name, which is my cron log txt, and I want to have the path, pf. So I'll copy this. Okay. Now I'm going to open up Crontab -E. Oops. There we go. And I'm going to start thinking about adding an entry. I'm going to type in the command first, or the path. Okay. So it's that, and then the name of the file was my cron log .txt. So essentially, I'm going to try to write something into that file. We saw an example somewhere. So let's say I'm going to write, I'm going to use redirection, and I'm going to try something. So let's say echo, date or uptime or just something, some command from the system. I'm redirecting it to that file. Does that make sense? So then I want to make it work, right? So essentially the first field we've established is minutes. So just so that we see a quick, this happened quickly, let's do it every minute, for instance, right? So, okay, so how do I do every minute? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Just kidding. So that takes a long time to do every minute, right? So there's got to be a better way of doing that. Well, probably that one, right? Do you agree that it's kind of the same thing? Because that's every value in that range. Perfect. All right, and then the other ones, just like that. Do you see that? So every minute, essentially, we would want to write uptime to micron log. So let's see if it works, right? Any questions? Did everyone get the syntax? All right, great. So let's go ahead and try this out. All right, so that's it. So as you can see, I have added an entry of a scheduled entry into cron. Basically, I provided the command that I want to run, which is just how I would type it on the terminal. Run a command, redirect it, dump it into a text file. And as you know, I have a text file here. Let's -L. So it's every minute. All right, let's take a look. So it wrote literally uptime in there. Okay. Oh yeah, because I did it echo, right? Echo. Yeah, sorry. Well, that's my mistake. So it's just writing like it as if I had written the word hello in there. I should have just done uptime. So sorry about that. We'll fix it in a sec. I just want to see if it writes it twice or if it's overwriting. And I just did a redirection, so there are other ways of doing it. What time? 3. Still marked as 1341. 1342. There it is. So it wrote twice, right? So it's logging basically. Now let's fix it and let's change it to the actual date. So it's going to be Crontab -E. See, now I'm going to come here and just remove that echo basically. So now it runs the command uptime and it should write it to the file. And then we're just going to give it a minute. We don't have to do anything because it's already there. And it's already in execution mode, if you will, and it's just going to run that. So you can see how powerful this is because now you can have multiple scripts running at different times, multiple commands running at different times, doing things. And as long as you have permissions, access, right, you can do just about anything. Yeah, go ahead. It's acting as a log. So actually it showed here it added 2 uptimes. Do you see that? So there's an entry for uptime and a second entry for uptime. So it's actually logging, not overwriting. So I'm giving it a couple of minutes to complete its task. So let's see. So you can see now it essentially added the uptime. And this is really great because you can have one cron entry that's just gathering the data in a file. And then you have a second cron entry that maybe once a day grabs that file and parses through it and then looks for some specific information about it. Do you see that? How nice that is. So for instance, let's say that I asked you something that might sound so difficult, right? So like I want you to get the netstat information every minute of the system and tell me what ports were open or what TCP three-way handshake connections that you have, right? And just log everything in a file. And it may sound like a very difficult thing, but it's actually pretty straightforward and something that you should be able to do now. So let's take a look at how to do something like that. All right, so you can see now there's 2 entries here. Whoops. You can see the 2 entries. But let's do that example I just asked you. All right, so how do you do it? So you guys know, I've shown you that you can do netstat dash NA, right? And that gets you the information of like network ports open, established connections, and so on, right? But there's a lot of information there, so you want to maybe filter it a little bit. So then you do the pipe. We talked about the pipe and how it's like scripting language for the terminal. And then you do grep TCP, right? And so yeah. Sorry? Yours didn't log anything? Did you get the path correct? So that's okay, so notice I have this file, right? Micron log. Remember, it's case sensitive in Linux. So make sure your files is exactly spelled like I did. Then I did a PWD to get the full path. Make sure you have that full path correct. Home C desktop, uppercase D, case sensitive, all of this, right? And then you're going to add the word file here at the end of the path. So now, so that's the information. So then go to Crontab -E and then look at what you have in your entry. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 asterisks, and then the command uptime, 2 greater than symbols, and then check this path. It should be, like that, where you created your file. It could be, but you'd have to do ls-l to make sure you have permissions, but okay. All right. So let me continue the example that I was giving you. We want to create a log of every connection made to the system, right? Establish connections and so on. So how do we do that? So we were discussing, I'm going to do clear. So I type netstat -NA, and then pipe, then grep TCP, right? And if you remember, it gives you this information. So it gives you TCP information of port numbers, etc., right? And now you want to create a log of this, essentially, but you want to log this information every 5 minutes for whatever reason. And then you would have another script that would scan through all that data and give you like a little summary of what has happened. You see that? And it's with something like Crontab, it's straightforward. And if the commands get a little bit more complex, you just write a Python script, which we will do in a second. But let's try this one out. So as you can see, I have the command. So then all I'm going to do is I'm going to open Crontab -E. All right. Now I'm going to add this second entry, right? So I want to say that I want to run this every 2 minutes. So you do something like that. So it's something like every minute, but every 2 minutes, essentially, right? So now I add the other little asterisks. And now the command should be netstat dash, exactly as you would type it on the command line, NA pipe grep. See, this is the power of Linux right here, right? So this is what makes it extremely powerful. TCP, but we're not done, right? You can then redirect it to that same file, for instance, that we were using, right? So I can, essentially just copy this. So now I'm going to try to log 2 things, right? 2 pieces of information in there. So I'm kind of like gathering some really nice information from different sources. And then I can write a third cron entry that analyzes the file every so often and gives me a summary or it's looking for something suspicious, let's say. So it becomes like a cybersecurity related thing. Does this make sense, guys? All right, so let's go ahead and see if it works. And you guys try it out on your own as well. So I'm going to do clear. Essentially, what I need is I need to see that that information from netstat has been written to the file. That's the first entry. Okay, so let's give it a couple of minutes. And that's it. We'll just continue doing exercise examples of that for the rest of the class today. And then on Wednesday, of course, we'll do the lab, which is already posted on Brightspace. We'll take a look at that one too, and there's a few problems related to it. Any questions? Pretty amazing, right? So that's really nice. I can't stop thinking that AI agents will tie into this for way more automation. It's like crazy. Yeah, go ahead. It's assigned to your account. So it should be, if you're logged in, it's for your files. It should be fine. Every user in this system, in theory, would have their own Crontab. And you don't want the entries of one user to interfere with the entries of another user, right? So the file, so this file, micron log, which is owned by Seed, and you're logged in as Seed, and you have the Crontab as Seed, should work. There shouldn't be any. I don't, it shouldn't, it on its own files, though. It should not write on the files of another user, right? That's on, right? That means that's essentially the whole point of it. So remember, it just depends. I can't really answer it exactly because it depends on who the owner is and what permissions are here related to that owner. But in general, write, well, you can see actually, well, yeah, nobody can write to this file except Seed and group Seed. So that by default is going to be how your files are created in this operating system. Got it? All right, great. So hopefully we got some input in there. So the definitely the number has gone up, right? 1694 seems like way more than 530. Whenever I'm looking at Linux, I always look at content a lot. So let's take a look again. So I'm going to do cat my cron log. Ah, it worked. You see that? So I am, not only am I was I adding all these uptimes, but I added at least one cron entry, and notice that afterwards it added the uptime. You see that? So there's all these uptimes here. This is one netstat full, and then here you have another uptime. So essentially you're creating a really nice log. We could collect networking data, which we will try in a second, something like TCP dump, right? So, which is one of the, when we look at the networking tools that we have available for Linux. So lots of security stuff here. You have, you have something that happened strange in the network and you're told, keep an eye on it. So you can just write a few scripts or a few commands with cron, collect a lot of data in a text file, and then write another set of scripts that are just constantly analyzing that output. And if it'll flag something possibly that looks anomalous or something like that. All right, so I'm gonna try to do that since this is kind of fun. So let's take a look. See, now we have several uptimes in there, and we had a second set of entries. Now you can further specify grep by saying, for instance, instead of listen, you could have said wait time, so that if you see a lot of those wait times, there's a denial of service attack going on. You see what I'm saying? Like, what if you saw like hundreds of thousands, well, maybe not hundreds of thousands, but thousands, let's say, right, of wait listen in here? Then that essentially is a denial of service attack detector right there. Pretty straightforward with cron. Got it, guys? Does that make sense? And I think we had talked about this, right? So when we establish a connection in the three-way handshake, the port number that's in use is shown here as established. If the three-way handshake has been started but not finished, it'll say like waiting or something like that. And that's an indicator of a denial of service. It's just an example. All right, so let's take a look at adding the third entry into this log of something like TCP dump. So it's going to be some network packets essentially. So maybe we can go to the web or ping something or something like that and capture some data. All right, so how do we do that? Once again, we go to our Crontab. There we go, Crontab-E. And now we just have to think about what I want. So, but before we do that, actually, let's test out the command on the terminal just so that we know that it works. Now, this one is a little bit tricky because it might require the root privilege. So that's the only thing, because to access the network card, you need the root privilege. This is actually a little bit harder. Trying to think here. This would work. So I have it here. So TCP dump, right? So TCP dump is like Wireshark, right? But for the terminal. So then you do, let's just do that for now. Okay, so you don't have permission to capture on that device, operation not permitted. So it's what I was saying, right? So in this case, then sudo is necessary. And now when I do that, I am listening on the network card for any activity. Give me a sec. So I open the internet here. There you go. So you see there's a little bit of networking activity going on because, of course, lots of it. I opened a website which started to send out packets for communication. Got it? All right. Sorry, you had a question. That's a good question, right? So that's let's take a look. So that might be the problem here. And I don't remember. So let's try it. So we know how to run the command, right? And we know that it generates a lot of data. And there are ways to write to a specific file for this. I'm just trying something out, which may be a problem that you get in the homework, right? How to figure this out. All right, so let's go back to Crontab. Cron tab -E. All right. So I want to do the exact same thing, but now I want to write some networking data to my file. I'm just going to copy this, going to paste it. All right. Just to make sure that I capture this, I'm going to do every minute. Okay. You see I'm adding every minute. And then I'm going to say, what was it? TCP dump. TCP dump. Just like that, and then a redirection of the output essentially, right? So this would be the idea. So the question is, do we have to let me put sudo in there, I guess. I mean, in theory, it's running on the under this. What I would say, right, is that when it gets to that command, it's like running on the terminal. It's gonna check that it's under that user's. That's the cron for that user, and that user is a sudo. So essentially, right? It's just like in the terminal, it raises the privileges. Hopefully, it would do it here. We just have to wait and see. Okay, 9710. So it's been definitely collecting data, right? 9710. I will visit a website just in case. You just something I can find in there. All right, so it went. So this should have generated a lot of traffic, networking data. All right, so let's go ahead now. Let's run this again. So 13,868. Let's check it out. Oh, yeah. What do you guys think? Did it work? It did, right? Yeah, so that's the beautiful thing about Linux, right? So even though I didn't know the answer, I essentially understood the fact that sudo, that cron is running under that account. Sudo would try to raise the privileges, would check the account. That cron tab belonged to that account. So it raised the privileges so that you could have access to the network. Does that make sense? Yeah, go ahead, please. Yeah, sure. Sure. But anyway, just to show, like this is network traffic, right? You can see it says LSU there. So we did essentially complete the test. All right. You want me to go where? Yeah. Um, yeah. Do you want to look at the last command, maybe? This one? Yeah, so it's just the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the 5 asterisks, sudo, TCP dump, redirection, and to the file that we've been writing to, our log file essentially. Any other questions, guys? Is this making sense? Yeah, please. Yeah, so that I wrote it down actually for your benefit. So that's what I was doing. So I wrote it down here. So I called it cron syntax. You can find it on the GitHub. And so essentially I said that's the syntax of it. So the cron file uses one-line entries to run tasks. Okay. And each one of these entries has the following format. So here is the format. So it's going to be minutes, hours, day of month, weekday, and the command, right? And then where the command is anything you could write on the terminal. So the first 5 fields specify the times at which cron should execute the command. So here's a description of each of the fields and the values accepted. So minutes, that's going to be a range from 0 to 59. Hours is going to be hour of the day, military time, essentially, 0 to 23, where 0 is midnight. Day of month, numeric day within a month from 1 to 31. Month of the year from 1 to 12. And then weekday range from 0 to 6, where Sunday is equal to 0. So here's an example. And an entry in any of these fields, such as minutes, hours, can be single number, a pair of numbers separated by dash, which is a range, a comma-separated list of numbers, or an asterisk, as we define it. Did I answer your question? Yeah. Yeah, go ahead, please. Did I? Did you open? Yeah, sure. Yeah, of course. So you want me to open the log file? Sure. All right. Yeah, what about it? Yeah, you should have networking data. So, like this, like the LSU data. So I went to that website. So that tells you that's the networking data. And then it should have the net stat, which you can see now, actually what I was talking about, because now you've gone to a website, several ports have been opened, etc. And you can see established connections. So port numbers, you do see some time wait there. So maybe things were not established, but as long as that's not massive, it's not an attack or anything. Yeah. Do you have a question? You're good? So that's we essentially created a log of three things: uptime, network packets collected, and the netstat state. Now you could do another cron entry that basically parses this and looks for something like strange that's happening. Do you guys see that? So something suspicious, something like that. And you've just created your own network detection. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, I mean, let's do something simple. I mean, I'm not so what we need to do is we're going to have to read the file, right? I'll probably just use Python for this one, um, which might be a nice example, right, of integrating Python into this. And we're going to read the file, and you guys tell me, we're going to just look for some entries or something suspicious and highlight it. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. All right, so I'm going to do clear. Last and like I have a lot of material to go through still, but we can cover that on Wednesday, so that's fine. So let's think about it, right? So I'm gonna write I know this file, and this is the file that I want to analyze, right? And so I'm creating a network detection system or analytics tool. And because this is going to be a lot of code, it's probably better, although I could use a lot of piping and build something very sophisticated, that's very possible. But instead, I'm just going to use Python. All right, so I'm going to put the script here where I have my log actually. So I'm going to just say nano, and I'm going to call this one parse log for anomalies. And this is a little bit like that the cuckoo's egg, right? If you remember something suspicious was happening, so you can imagine how in the cuckoo's egg case, you could have written something like this to like inspect what's going on, that somebody is trying to steal your password files. So nano parse log for anomalies dot py. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead here, and I'm just going to do this. Now, I need to know the path again, which I think I actually have. Hopefully, I still have it. All right, I still have the whole thing, actually. So now I'm going to read this file, right? So I want to read this file. That's key thing. So I'm going to say f equal open. This is just Python syntax. And I'm going to say double quote, double quote. All right, so now I'm going to open that file. I don't need to write to it. I'm just going to read it. That's it, right? So now every time I run this script, I read the file and I'm going to analyze it. So for line in f dot read lines, just like that. You guys see that? And then I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's it. So all I have to do now is check every single one of these lines for something suspicious. LSU, for instance, is a nice thing that I can do, right? So I'm gonna say if line, or sorry, if LSU in line do something. So I'm gonna say 1, 2, 3, 4. And so this is where you decide what you want to do. So for instance, you can create a second file that you're going to write to that basically has anomalies. Yeah. What is the what? Undo. You mean one of these down here? Which one? This one? Oh, what is M dash U, M minus U? So I guess M. I don't know. I don't use these commands actually. So um it's not a lot of code. I would just exit out and yeah. Sorry, I don't usually use these commands. So M minus U might be like shift maybe or something. Have to look it up. All right, so as I was trying this out, so if LSU in line, we're gonna just write that entry into a separate file. Okay, and that's gonna be my anomalies file. So I'm gonna create another one. F F right equal open. And I use the same path. Okay, and just like that. Different file though. So I'm going to call this one anomalies. Anomalies. And I'm going to write to this file, but maybe you would run this periodically. So you don't want to overwrite this file. Instead, you want to append to this file as a log file. So you can add the letter A, which means append, instead of the W, which means write, which would overwrite. Okay. So now I've opened this one. Once I'm done, I'm going to close these, especially because they're going to be open and closed a lot periodically via the cron facility. You want to make sure that you close all of these when you're done with the script. Just like that. So f.close, fwrite.close. All right. So that has happened. So now, and like I said, we could have done this with the pipe on the terminal, certainly possible. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we want to write that line into the anomalies file at least. So I'm going to do f underscore write dot write. We're going to write line, which line should have a new line character in there. And that's it. So this should be the script if I got it right. Okay, so we're basically collecting data, and then anything that matches some pattern, I'm going to write it to another file. Yeah. Huh? I'm not gonna make it executable. Instead, I'm just gonna do Python in the command, and that should work also. But yeah, you could do that. The shebang, that is cool. All right, so let's try this one. All right. So I've created my script here. So now I have to remember the name. So the name is this one. Parse log for anomalies. So now let's go to the cron tab. There we go. And now, all of these have been collecting a lot of data, right? So Remember, these are running in the background. If I leave these three commands like this, that log file is going to get pretty big, right? Because it's running. So a good suggestion might be that run this for a while, a couple of weeks, right? And then back up that file, delete it, and create a new one, because otherwise it's going to continue to get big. So, but also you could do that with cron fully automated, right? And we'll see some examples of creating backups and things like that as we continue with this discussion. But for now, let's just run this entry. And you guys tell me, right? So you guys probably at this point know how to do this new entry. So how do I do it? I want, I'm collecting the data, and now I want to run the Python script to find the anomaly. So, and I want to run it, let's say, every minute, just so I can, well, every 2 minutes. What do I do? Every 3 minutes. 3. All right, so asterisk over 3, yeah. Okay. Then what? You don't need sudo for this one. And this is a good example of not overusing sudo, right? These files are all owned by seed. Don't use sudo. It's important actually because you're adding problems actually if you're overusing. Go ahead. So Python or Python 3, as you guys don't have Anaconda, right? The script, right? So you need the full path, which is, I probably still have almost, okay. Well, I have the file name. And then it's going to be this one, because that's where I put my script. Okay. So there you go. You just built can sell this as an anomaly detection system. All right. So that works really well, actually. So every 3 minutes, you're going to run Python 3. You run your Python script there. Have 2 forward slashes here. It runs that. It just reads the file. It'll write to the other. So let's go ahead and run it. So we can see the file doesn't exist yet, but it should create it on the first attempt. Let's see what happened. Have to wait 3 minutes. Any questions while we're waiting? All right, so let me take a look at where we are. Hmm? You want me to, the Python script, you mean? Okay. So, hmm? All right, so we went over the syntax. Really, all I have left is to go over like a whole bunch of examples. And then a few little tricks. All right, so the file has been created, as you can see. It's got a lot of information. Anomalies, you see that? So let's take a look. It seems pretty big to me. I expected it to be much smaller. But let's see. Maybe I did something wrong in the logic. All right, so here is the anomalies file that I created. So I wanted every line in that log file that contained the string LSU. That's essentially. So if I did this correctly, every single one of these rows should have LSU in it. Yeah, what it is the lines are long. It's probably not that many rows. So far, every line has LSU in it. Oh, wow. Wow, you open one website, look at all the links. Yeah, it works. So every line in here has the word LSU in it, I would say. Did this make sense, guys? How we did this? Any questions? Yeah. So there you go. Oh yeah, go ahead, please. It Python will create it for you if it doesn't exist. Yeah. And then once it exists, is because I added that letter A, it's always going to append to it. Yeah, so that's how it works. So here's the Python script. As you can see, fwrite, I said open anomalies, and I gave it the letter A. So if the file that didn't exist, it created it. After that, it just keeps appending to the bottom. Because at the end of the day, because we're running with cron, a couple of cron entries are collecting the data, and then other entries are analyzing the collected data. And then I could create yet another entry to analyze anomalies for further processing. As you can see, until eventually I could add an entry that takes the final file and creates a PDF report and emails it to me, right? So you can do all of that, no problem. So you can see how this already automates a lot of things, and you add AI to this, you basically have an employee that can do all these things. All right, so that was hopefully that made sense. That's the complete example, just very straightforward. So I'll go back to and I'm recording this, I'll post the video later today, so you can take a look at it. We saw the Python code. Let's just go back to Crontab. And you can see I did all of this with about 3 entries, right? So I'm adding the uptime, the netstat network connections information, and even the network traffic, right? That's pretty important. And then you analyze things. So one scenario that comes to mind is, let's say that you told your employees that they can't go on Facebook on the computer, right? And they start going to Facebook here. Facebook would appear in these entries. So then you detect it, and then you know they went to Facebook. See that? I'm not saying you should spy on them, but this is you can do lots of things, right? And you can also, if you're an administrator, obviously you can lock the cron entries so they can't be modified by others. Does this make sense, guys? All right, so what time is it? It's 1:23, so we probably have time for like a couple more. All right, so I'm gonna go back to the GitHub and just kind of go over. Yeah, go ahead. Wireshark is on this machine. So let me close this one. See this little fin thing here? That's Wireshark. So you have Wireshark there. Wireshark will start, and you have in the class, we'll have some Wireshark related tutorials that you have to go through. But Wireshark is more GUI based, and then TCP dump was more command line based, but they're similar. So if you want to start it, just double click on it. Yep. So as I was saying, let's take a look at a few more examples of cron tab entries, and then we'll continue these on Wednesday before the homework assignment. I'm going to go down here. I'm going to call this one example 2. I'm going to say, actually, I'm going to say, I'll just say, since we did something just now, right? So I'll say example 2. And what did we do? We did like anomaly detection system, which is what I just did. Collect data with netstat and what else? TCP dump, right? Which were the important, and then analyze, and no, sorry, and then look for string using Python. Right, so we did that one, and you can reference the video. Let's create a couple more examples if we have time. So example 3, all right, is going to be something else. Let's see. All right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to write the command, and you guys tell me what it's doing, okay? So let's do that. So example 3, and let me make this a little bit bigger. So example 3, so 0, comma, 10, comma, 20, comma, 30, comma, 40, comma, 50, comma, space, 7-18, space, asterisk, 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 dot forward slash a dot exe. You guys see that? I'll even add an extra space here just to separate it out. So what is this one doing? So on the quizzes, on the exams, on the homework, you have to tell me what it is, or I'll give you the problem and you give me the syntax. So what's happening here? Yeah, please. Every 10 minutes, okay. Okay, good. Hmm? What do you say? Yeah, that's an executable program. And then I added the exe just to kind of remind you that that's an executable, the dot forward slash. And then every day? Every day, yeah. Very good. Exactly. That's what it is, right? So every day, because this is an asterisk, 7, it's military time. So 7 a.m. and 18 is 6 p.m. And then every 10 minutes, similar to the other one. Make sense? Any questions on this one? All right, so I'll add it to the GitHub. So I'll provide the information. So runs a.exe every 10 minutes from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. daily. You see that? That's it. All right, so we did that one. We have time for one more. So we're going to do one more. And, I'll be introducing new commands for, there's a lot of commands in Linux. So let's do this. So I'll say example 4. Okay. 0, 0, asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Find right. All right. What about that one? The find is a command for looking for things, right? So find is the find command. We'll see examples of that a little later, but it's a command in Linux for looking for things. What is the forward slash? Do you guys remember what that means? The root directory, right? So basically the whole file system, search, find. What are you looking for? This is a wildcard .c file, C code, right? Right. So find in the whole file system files that are C files. See how powerful that is. Now, what about this here? What does that mean? When do you run it? Yes, please. Yeah. Which is what? The first hour every day, 12 a.m., which is midnight, right? Same as midnight. And I think I wrote that, yeah, see, 0 is midnight. Makes sense? So refer back to the instructions I provided. Got it, guys? Yeah, very good. So, very good. Excellent. So, as you can see, this is extremely powerful, right? So if you combine cron with pipe, the pipe, which we will, throughout the semester, we'll go back to that, with Python scripting or Bash scripting, and just the Linux commands, you have serious power to develop powerful applications that you would think must be extremely difficult, and actually they aren't as difficult. All right, so let me add the definition for this one. So we said this one runs the find command at midnight. Okay? So, and searches for those C files. All right, so I think this is a good stopping point. And then I'll just stay over if you have questions or anything like that. And we're going to take a look if you want to get started with your homework assignment, you can do that. So let me commit the changes. All right, so remember this is in the cron section. So just double checking, that's the last example that we did. All right, so now let's go back to Brightspace. All right, so this week in the homework assignment on Wednesday, I will continue doing more examples of like these. And I may add an additional problem. I haven't decided. Let's take a look. Homework. All right, so we've done services, I believe, history of Unix. We are at task scheduling and cron. A lot of what I said today is in these cron lecture notes. Also, you can take a look at it there. Remember, this is your reading. The slides says managerial. So please make sure you read through that. This is also probably notes. Is what I've said today. This is the homework, very likely. So let's click on that. Yeah, so you can see that here. It's similar to previous labs, series of commands. I've already showed you how to do TCP dump, so just further elaborating on that one. And then cron over here, we've done examples of this today. So just go through all of these, take screenshots, run a script with cron. The only difference is this one is Perl instead of Python. Perl is another scripting language, so there's Bash, right? The original native scripting language to Linux. Perl, which is a very oldie one, and then Python, which is a much modern one. But I don't like Perl, to be honest. I don't like the syntax of it, but it's a powerful language that has been around. I prefer Python, but I'll show you an example of this one, just so that you've seen it. I will spend some time later in the semester in Bash, though. Bash is pretty important. And then, yeah, you can see the problems here. So 4 are cron related and 2 are command pipeline related. So I'll do more examples of the command pipeline on Wednesday. But yeah, so it's 6 problems so far. Okay, so this is your homework assignment. For those of you that want to get started with it, you can. You should be able to solve some of these already. And then I will provide more examples and you can ask questions about them. Make sense? All right, great. So I'll stop the video here and I'll stay for a few minutes if you guys have any questions.